In this tutorial, we will take a look at how we can make this attack state of this enemy with state machine. And once our player in detect range, then it's gonna detect, and once it's get close enough while making the charge state of enemy, it's gonna move over to attack state. And once our player outside of attack state, then it's once again enemy just gonna detect, and if it's not able to detect, then enemy just gonna play the move state, basically the move animation of our enemy. And before I jump into the coding part, I want to thanks Alex Nadu and Thai Chuang for joining Patreon membership and unlocking exclusive benefits. And if you are guys interested, then you can go and check it out. I have the link in the description and also you can check out my Udemy courses on game development. I will have the link in the description. Of course, I will have the link in the description. So without furthering delay, let's dive into this tutorial. When this enemy playing the charging state and enemy is close enough to our player, let's suppose the player is somewhere around here from this enemy, then this enemy need to move over to attack state from charge state. So we're gonna make that. To make that, we're gonna shoot out a ray and we're gonna check a close distance range you can think of. If if our player gets inside of it, basically collide with that ray, then this enemy over here, it's gonna move over to attack state immediately. So let's open up our script for that. So first thing what we're gonna do, we're gonna open up the charge state where we're charging on this player game object. So let's open that up quickly. Charge state, we charging over here, and we're gonna make a parameter for close range, and I'm gonna remove this. So we're gonna make a parameter for our close range to check this player is close enough to this enemy or not. So let's make a parameter for that. So we're gonna move over to top of our class, and let's make a protected bool, and we can call this is player in close range, just like that. Close range, and we can just set the close range over here. So we just made the parameter. So now let's set it. So we will navigate to do checks function where we're checking every single frame. So we will set our is player close range parameter equal to entity. So we will go to entity class, which script is sitting on every enemy game object, and now we can call out the dot check close range function. But we can notice we didn't create it yet, so we're gonna create that first inside our entity class to check. Basically we just want to shoot out the ray, and if that ray just collide with our player, then this enemy need to move over to or switch over to attack state immediately from our charge. So let's do that. So for now I'm just gonna make this one comment by double forward slash. Let's save our script, and now I'm gonna move over to my entity class, and we're gonna make a function to just shoot out the ray from that from that enemy player checkpoint that we created inside our enemy. So let's make the function somewhere over here, and we're gonna make this function public, and we're gonna type this full instead of void because we just want to return whatever we're gonna get inside this function. We're gonna store it into a container or in a parameter, so that's why we type bool, because we just want to return. And now we're gonna call it something like check player in close range. Just like that we're gonna call it. Let's make first bracket and some curly brackets. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna shoot out the ray, and to shoot out the ray we have to use this physics 2d. So we're gonna use this physics 2d dot raycast, and this function as a first argument it's gonna take the point. So let's pass our player checkpoint dot position from where we want to shoot out the ray. So we just pass our player checkpoint. From here we just want to shoot out the ray. Let's go to script once again, and the second thing, it's gonna take the direction. So we're gonna pass our player checkpoint dot right, means the direction player checkpoint is facing. Since it's facing to the right direction, so we're gonna put a minus in front of it, so it will shoot out the ray in the negative direction. And now the third argument, we can specify the length of the ray. So since we don't have it, we can just give a default value, but instead of giving a default value, let's create a parameter for that as well. And then we're gonna do it inside entity data class, where we just holding all of the data, like all of the things, distance, we checking our player max aggro range, like that. So we're gonna do it inside this entity data class. To do that, first thing, I'm gonna make this whole function comment by holding down shift control forward slash, and let's save our script. And comment basically don't interrupt our code, we do know. Let's navigate to entity data class, and the fourth argument we need to pass inside this function, which is physics2d.raycast layer mask, basically which game object we want to target. So since we want to target player, so as a layer mask we're gonna choose player. So make a variable called public float check in close distance. I'm gonna do it once again, public float, and I can call this one close range distance. So let's call it close range distance, just like that. And by default I'm gonna give something like 2.1 f unit, just like that. And we can create a parameter for our layer mask. So since we already have a layer mask called what is player, and we have chosen player, so we can use that, or we can create a separate one, but I think just going with that is fine. If you don't have it, then include this line of code, and that's all you have to do. And now let's save our entity data class. Let's go over to entity, and now we're gonna remove this forward slashes. So as a third argument, we're gonna pass our the distance, the close range distance. So let's go over to entity data, and now we're gonna access the close range distance. And the fourth argument, it's gonna take the layer mask. So let's pass our entity data dot what is player, which already chosen player, and we're gonna close that up with semicolon. So this function over here, it's gonna shoot out the ray from this player checkpoint, from here to the left direction, because we just put a minus in front of player checkpoint dot right, so it's gonna be negative direction. So if that ray collided with that player game object, then this function over here, it's gonna give us true value, else it will give us a false value. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna store it in a variable. So let's create a raycast hit 2d variable, because this is just gonna work like as a raycast. So that's why we're gonna create it the type of the variable, which is raycast hit 2d, and we can call this one hit info, and we're gonna set equal to this. So this hit info can be true or false depending upon if the player if the ray really collide with that player. So this function gonna give us true value, and we're storing inside this info. So this info also gonna be true right away, because we're directly setting it. So this can be true or false depending upon if the ray really collide with that player. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna return this hit info. So let's return it. Let's return our hit info, basically the result. Sorry, hit info. Let's close that up with semicolon, and we can save our script. And now we can just move over to our this class. So I will navigate to my charge state. Now we just created that parameter, and we already have this one. So let's remove this forward slashes, and now we will go to entity class, and let's call out the check player in close range. And now we're going to close that up with semicolon, and this function can be true or false depending upon what this return us. So if the ray really collide with that player, then this hit info just gonna give us true value. So this function check player in close range will be true. And if we navigate to charge state, so this function gonna be true if the ray collide with that player. Then this is player in close range just also gonna be true right away. As you can see, now it basically means that player in close range. Now what this enemy game object really need to do, it's need to switch over to attack state. This enemy need to play the attack animation, and I have to do all of those things. For now, we're gonna print out a message. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna move over to our do checks function over here, oh sorry, logic update, and over here we can check. So let's use the if condition, and we will check that if is player in close range the parameter that we created, if it's true. So if it's true, now what we can simply do, we can simply we can simply so we need to switch over to our attack state, because player in close range. So for now we're gonna print out a message. Let's use the debug.log, and we will say player in close range, close range, uh, sorry, close range. So change to attack state, just like that. We're gonna call it as attack state, and we're gonna close that up with semicolon, and we can save our script. Let's navigate to Unity editor. But the thing is that if we choose our enemy, we cannot see that sphere that we created from our close range. This is the minimum distance and the maximum, so the close one gonna be somewhere around here. Would be nice if we draw it. So let's use the same function in order to draw. So we will navigate to our entity class where we shooting out the ray. We shooting out the ray over here. So let's draw the ray. To draw the ray, let's use this function, and we're gonna do it over here. We can do it anywhere we like. So before we draw, we basically need to check that if player checkpoint, if we assign it the player checkpoint or not. Means that we just take it we taken it this player checkpoint and drag it over to this player checkpoint field or not. If it's not, then we need to stop drawing, because we haven't assigned it the player checkpoint. So since we already assigned it, so we can just go ahead and we can draw the ray. So before we draw the ray, we're gonna check. So let's use the if condition, and we will check that if player checkpoint, if it's not equal to null, means it's not empty, and we assign it, so means we are ready to draw. To draw that, we're gonna use the gizmos dot draw ray function. Since we want to draw the sphere, so we're gonna use the draw where sphere, and this function as a first argument, it's gonna take the point from where you want to draw. So first thing what we're gonna do, we're gonna take the direction in which direction we want to draw. So since we want to draw over here, so we first thing we're gonna take this position, and top of this player checkpoint position we're gonna add the direction, and we're gonna multiply with the distance, the ray. So we're gonna get the point somewhere around here. So top of this position we basically need to add that the direction, and we're gonna multiply that direction with the length of the ray. So we're gonna get that. So the first thing we're gonna pass our player checkpoint dot position, and top of that we're gonna add the you can simply set the direction, so in which direction we're shooting out. So we're gonna pass player checkpoint dot right, and we're gonna put a minus in front of it, because we just want to do it in the left direction. And once this enemy flips to the right direction, it's gonna be somewhere around here. So now we're gonna multiply this direction with the length of the ray, so we're gonna multiply with our entity data close range distance, the parameter that we created for our close range, and the comma. Second thing we can specify the radius of that sphere that we created. So I'm gonna do it something like 0.2 f unit, just like that. And before I want to draw, I just want to choose a color, so I can just set the color gizmos dot color, and the color that I would like to draw with. So I'm gonna draw with color dot yellow, or red we can do it. I'm gonna draw with red. By now we can see that point, you can notice. And if we open up our entity data, which we have it over here, we can play around with it. So I'm gonna right click on it, and let's click on these properties, and if we choose our boss enemy in the hierarchy, we can play around the maximum, minimum, and the maximum. Sorry, we can play around with this close range, you can notice. I'm gonna drag it somewhere around here, and the minimum distance I'm gonna drag it somewhere around here. The maximum I just want to like this. Now you can see it's already seems fine. So if we get inside somewhere around here, because this is the length of the ray for our close range, and we just simply printing out the message. So let's choose our console tab, and we're gonna quickly play our game to test this out. And we can notice as soon as we are inside, if I pause my game, we can see as soon as we are inside of this, we can see if we move over to our console tab, player in close range, so change to attack state. So instead of printing out message, what we want this enemy to enter attack state. This enemy need to play the attack animation clip and all of those things. So we're gonna get out of play mode, and so what we're gonna do now, we're gonna create three separate scripts. One will be attack state, and that script just gonna be parent of any game object, any enemy game object. Any enemy game object just gonna inherit from that attack state class, and we're gonna create another enemy one attack state for this first enemy. If you have second enemy, then you can create enemy 2 attack state. If you have third enemy, then you can create enemy 3 attack state, and the list just goes on. We can create bunch of them. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna create those script. So move over to your project tab, assets, and I will head over to my script folder, state folder, right click, create mono behavior script, and name it to something like attack state. You can see I already created a script called attack state. So I'm gonna open that up quickly by double clicking on it, and this class not gonna inherit from mono behavior. So we can just go ahead and we can remove the start and update function, and instead of inheriting from mono behavior, we're gonna inherit from this state class. And this state class we just inheriting. Now we have to generate the constructor. So let's generate the constructor. So you can hold down control full stop, or you can simply right click on it, then quick action and refactorings, then generate constructor. And now we just generate the constructor, and let's reuse those function, which is enter state, exit state, logic update, physics update, do checks. So let's use them. So we're gonna override them. So let's click on generate override. We're gonna uncheck equals get hash to string, and then okay. And now what we're gonna do, inside this function, first thing we need to stop moving this enemy, because this is way close to our player, so it's need to stop. And instead of charging on our player by now, so this enemy need to play the attack animation, like doing all of the things. And we just want to create the attack point somewhere around here, and we're gonna create a circle from that point. So I'm gonna talk about that. So the first thing we're gonna what we're gonna do, we're gonna stop moving. To do that, let's go over to physics update, and let's call out the move function. And as a move speed, we're gonna choose 0, so it's not gonna move at all. So let's go to entity class, which we have the reference, and now let's call out the move function. And move speed, I'm gonna put 0 if, because if we are attack state, then this enemy stops, it's need to stop playing, it's need to stop speeding, it should stop, sorry, this enemy need to stop right away. I really apologize. And also we need to create the point, since we are in attack state. So we're going to create a attack point, and from that point we just want to create the circle. So we can just do it over here. So we can just move over to top of our class. So let's come at the top of our class, and we can create a variable from where we want to create the point. So basically from where we want to shoot out the ray. So let's create a so let's put it inside our constructor. So we just gonna have the reference. So we're gonna make a protected, we're gonna make a protected transform, means for position you can think of, or basically for position. And we can call this attack point, because we need the point from where we want to create the circle. So we need the point, we do know. So let's put it inside our constructor. So we're gonna put over here, so that will be transform for position, and we can call this one attack point. So let's call it attack point, and now we're gonna set this. So this dot attack point equal to our attack point. This dot attack point basically referencing this one, and this attack point referencing this one. Now we just put it inside our constructor, and by now you can think of we have the point. And to draw the, so we will make two function. One will be trigger attack, and the another one will be finish attack. Like once we complete the animation of attack of this enemy, then we're gonna check if the attack is finished, and if the player is still inside attack range, then this enemy once again it's need to attack on our player. So basically that is the thing we're gonna do. So we're gonna make two function to attack on our player. So let's make that, and we're gonna make this public virtual void, because we just want to reuse this function, so that's why we type virtual, and we can call this one trigger attack, and this function just gonna be responsible for creating the circle that we gonna create from that attack point. And the second and the one more function we're gonna make, and that will be finish attack, and that function just gonna keep track of if the attack is finished of this enemy or not. So let's make that function as well, and we're gonna make it somewhere around here. So let's make a public we're gonna make a public virtual void, and we can call this one finish attack, just like that. Finish attack first bracket and some curly brackets, and now that's fine. And finished, let's call it finished attack. And also let's create a bool parameter to just keep track of if the attack is finished or not. And once we're gonna call out the function, then we're gonna set is attack finished is true. So let's do that. So let's go to top of our class, and let's make a variable for it. So we're gonna make a protected bool, and we can call this one is attack finished, is attack finished, just like that we're gonna call it. And let's close that up with semicolon. So once we enter to that state, then we're gonna set our attack finished to false, because the attack is not done yet. But once we're gonna call out this finish attack function, then we're gonna set this is attack finished to true. So let's set is attack finished equal to true, because the attack is finished. And now we can check with this parameter if attack is finished, and this player is still close to our enemy game object. That means once again this enemy need to play the attack state, or basically it's need to player detect or charge, you can think of. So now we just set it to true, and what we're gonna do now, we're gonna save our script, and we have to create the circle. And to create the circle, we're gonna use the physics2d dot overlap circle function, and we're gonna do it inside this trigger attack function. So that is the reason we created this function, in order to create the circle. And if that circle collide with our player, then player game object need to take damage. So we're gonna make a function for it, which is physics2d dot overlap circle function, overlap circle. And this function, as a first argument, it's gonna take the point from where we want to create the circle. So we created the attack point that we know, so let's pass our attack point dot position. And the second thing, we can specify the radius. So let's create another function for our to holding the data, like radius of the circle. And the third argument, we need to put the layer mask, means which game object we really want to target. So we're gonna create a attack data class for that scriptable object script. So let's make this one comment by let's save our script. Let's navigate to Unity editor. Let's navigate to our project tab, assets, and I will head over to my script folder, data folder, and let's right click, create create, then go over to scripting, scriptable object script, and you can name it to something like attack data or attack state data, just like that. I already created a script called a scriptable object script, which is attack data. So I'm gonna open that up by double clicking on it, and we can just make the radius, and we can put the layer mask. And you can see in the top we have the part where we can create the asset. So we just gonna choose the same way. Basically, I will move over to my chart data scriptable objects, and I'm gonna copy this part, which is create asset menu, and let's put it there. So we're gonna do it same. Let's remove this, and we're gonna paste, and this will be our data attack data instead of chart. So we're gonna call it attack data. So the path we specified, firstly we will go to data, and then attack data. So inside this class, what we need two things. First thing, we need to specify the radius of the circle that we wanna create. So we're gonna make a public float, and we can call this one attack radius. So let's call it attack radius, and by default I'm gonna set it to something like 1.2 f unit. And the third argument, we need to put the layer mask, or which game object we want to target. So let's create a public layer mask, and let's call it what is player or target. What is player or target layer, just like that, but I'm gonna call it what is player. Now save our script, and let's navigate to our attack state once again, and now we can just put it. But before we put it, we do know we need a reference to our attack data scriptable object script. So let's put it inside our constructor, so we're gonna have the reference. So let's come at the top of our class, and let's create a variable for that. So we're gonna make a protected, that will be attack data, and we can call it attack data. And now let's put it inside our constructor. So as over here comma, I'm gonna pass my, that will be attack data type, and let's call it attack data. And now we need to set, so we're gonna set our this dot attack data equal to our attack data. And now we can see we have the reference, and we can just let's remove these forward slashes and all of this. So as a second argument, we need to put sorry as a second argument, we need to put our radius. So let's go to our attack data scriptable object script first, and now we're gonna access the attack radius. And the third argument, we can put the layer mask. So let's pass our attack data what is player, that's a layer mask that we assign it. And now it's gonna create the attack point. So we need to create the attack point from this enemy. So let's create it first. So let's choose our boss enemy in the hierarchy. Let's create an empty child game object, and we can call this one attack point. Attack point, and we're gonna move this point somewhere around here, and we just want to check. So I will navigate to my animation tab, and I will check attack of this enemy animation clip. Animation clip. So somewhere around here. So we're gonna move it somewhere around here, because we just want to create the circle from this point, like we specified the attack radius. And I'm gonna choose an gizmos for that. I'm gonna choose this one, or let's choose a green one. So from this, and now we just have that. From this point we're gonna do it. So now we just create it, and we're gonna store it into a collider 2D variable, and we can call this one call info, or collision information equal to this. So this just gonna create the circle from this point. We specify the attack point, and if that circle really collide with this player, then this function over here, it's gonna give us true value, and we're storing the value inside this call info collider 2D parameter that we created. So this call info can be true or false depending upon the circle is really colliding with our with this player or not. So for now we're gonna print out a message. So let's use the if condition. Let's make first bracket some curly brackets, and we will check that if call info is equals to true, or if we just leave like this, it also does the same thing, means the circle is really colliding with our player. So what our player need to do, it's need to take damage. For now we're gonna print out a message, so we're gonna type debug.log and we will say call info dot game object dot name, means the game object the circle collided with. So in our case that will be player, and top of that we're gonna add a custom message, so put it inside quotation takes damage, so the name will be player. So the message should be pop up says player takes damage. And now we're gonna save our script, and if we navigate to Unity editor, we're gonna create the E1 script, a E1 enemy attack script for this first enemy, or you can think of enemy 1 attack state. Now we just created that, and we also gonna create another class which just gonna inherit from our attack state class, and that will be enemy 1 for this specific enemy, you can say. So now let's create that script quickly. So let's navigate to our I will move over to my enemy underscore 1 folder, right click, create mono behavior, skip enemy to something like E1 E1 attack state, or you can call it enemy 1 attack state for this first enemy. If you have second enemy, then you can create a script called enemy 2 attack state, just like that. So I already created that script, you can see. So I'm gonna open that up by double clicking on it, and we will remove the I start and update function, and we're not gonna inherit from mono behavior. Instead we're gonna inherit from our attack state class. And now we need to generate the constructor. So let's generate the constructor, and let's override those function once again. So let's generate overrides, and we're gonna uncheck equals get has to string, and rest of this we will use them. So let's click on OK. So we have all of this function, you can see. So we need a reference to our basically we need a reference to this enemy 1 script. So we can move over to this charge state, detect state, idle state, move state, depending upon what this where player is. So we just need a reference to it. But before we do, let's do it quickly now. So we need a reference to our enemy 1. So let's come at the top of our class, and we can create a private parameter. We're not gonna make it protected, since we're not gonna use it any other classes, like we're not gonna inherit from this E1 attack state at all. So that's why we can instead of creating protected, we can create private, because we don't need anymore. We're not gonna create another class which will inherit from this E1 attack state, just like that. So that is the reason. So we're gonna make a private, and the script that we're looking for is a enemy 1, and we can call this enemy 1, enemy 1 sorry enemy 1, and let's close that up with semicolon, and let's put it inside our constructor. So as a comma, we're gonna put it enemy 1 sorry enemy 1. So let's create enemy 1, and we can call this enemy 1, just like that. And now let's set this. So we're gonna set our this dot enemy 1 equal to enemy 1, and now we can see we have the reference, and we can just create some parameter to just keep track of where player is. If it's still inside attack range of this enemy, then this enemy once again it's need to move over to attack state, and if it's close enough, then it should play the attack state over again and again. Really sorry. So now we just created, let's save our script, and we need to create this state inside our enemy 1, so we can switch over to this attack state of this enemy. So we need to create the attack state inside our enemy 1 script. So let's go over to enemy 1, and let's create the state just like we created this move state, idle state, detect state, and the charge state. Now let's create the attack state, and we're gonna make this one public, so we can switch over to attack state, and that will be E1 attack state, and let's call it attack state. And now let's navigate to our start function, and we're gonna set the variable So we will set our attack state equal to a new e1 attack state, and now it's gonna take the parameters. So as a first variable, it's gonna take the entity class, which is itself, because we inheriting from our entity class, so we can just pass itself. So we're gonna pass this. And the second thing, it's gonna take the animator, so let's put our animator. And the third argument, it's gonna take the bool name, so this will be the attack, so I'm gonna call it attack just like that. And the fourth argument, I'm gonna pass my state machine, and the fifth argument, it's gonna take the attack point. And we can see that we don't have the attack point over here, so let's create a parameter for our attack point, and I'm gonna make it somewhere in the bottom. So let's make it a serialized private and transform, which is responsible for position, and we can call this one attack point. And now let's put it inside over here, which is our attack point. And now as a sixth argument, it's gonna take the attack data. Also we don't have the attack data, so let's create the attack data just like ideal move and detect and the charge data. So let's make a serialized field, a private attack data, and let's call it attack data just like that. And now we're going to put it inside our over here. So let's basically we're just creating this state that we created. So in our case that attack state class or C# class. So now as a last argument, we can just put itself. So it's gonna take the enemy one script, and this is enemy one script itself, so we can just simply pass this. So let's put it there, this, and close that up with semicolon. And now we just done that. We can save our script, and we can just move over to Unity editor, and we can simply open up our script, which is the charge state, and we checking if the player is close enough. So we can just move over to our enemy one attack state that we created. Now we can just put it, we can just do that. So I'm gonna open up my charge state class where we charging our player, and over here we can see we simply printing out this message. So instead of doing this, we can just move over to that state which we recently created. So in our case, that is a attack. So instead of doing inside this charge state, we're gonna do it inside this e1 charge state, because this enemy is this is for this first enemy. So we're gonna do it there instead of doing this charge state. So let's remove this, and we just created this protected is player is close range. So let's do it there. So we just gonna move over to our e1 charge state, and over here we're gonna check. So let's use the if condition. So let's make sure you just inside logic update, and let's make first bracket some curly brackets, and we will check that is player is close range, means our player is close range. Now what this enemy need to do, it need to move over to our attack state. So we do have the reference of enemy one script, we can see, so we can just do that. So to change the state, so first thing we will go to state machine script, then we're gonna use the change state function, and we need to put the state which state we just want to enter. So it in this case it will be the enemy one attack state, basically the attack state. So first thing we will go to enemy C# class, and now let's put the state. Basically let's put our attack state, because we just want to move over to that state. It would be nice if we able to see the circle. So we're gonna reuse that on draw gizmo selected, the function that we created inside entity class. So let's go over to our entity class. We can see we just made this function which is draw, and we're gonna reuse this function inside our enemy one script, because this enemy one script we can see it's inheriting from this entity class. So we can to reuse that function once again, we do know that we basically have to mark this function as virtual. So we're gonna make a public. So instead of private, we're gonna make this public virtual void. It means that we can reuse this function inside our inherited classes. So we inherited inside this enemy one. So the first thing, quickly we need to save our script, and let's go over to enemy one script, and now we're gonna reuse this function. So we can simply type override and then on draw gizmo selected, or what else you can do, you can just click on this name of the script, right click on it, quick refract and refract, sorry, refactorings, quick action refactorings, then generate overrides, and then you can uncheck the get has equal to string, and we're gonna use this on draw gizmo selected, and let's click on this OK. And now to draw that, we do know that what we have to do, we have to use the function call on gizmos.draw. So the first thing, we need to check if we assign it the attack point or not. If we haven't, then we need to stop drawing. So let's use the if condition, and we will check that if our attack point, if it's not equal to null, means we assign it. If that is the case, it means we are ready to draw the circle. So we will use the gizmos dot draw where sphere function to draw the circle. So as a first argument, it's gonna take the point, so let's put our attack point dot position, and the second thing, it's gonna take the radius, and we specified inside attack data. We do know, if I navigate to my attack data class, we can see we just specified the attack radius, which is 1.2. So let's put it there. So the first thing, we need to move over to our attack data. So let's go to attack data class, and then we're gonna access attack radius, and now we're gonna close that up with semicolon. And if you want to choose an color, you can do that. So I'm gonna choose the color gizmos dot color, the color that I would like to draw with. So I'm gonna draw with color dot yellow or red. I'm gonna draw with yellow. As soon as script compiles, we not able to notice that circle, because if I move over to my enemy one script, we need to assign this variable. So first thing, we need to create the attack data, and we're gonna take our attack point. Let's drag it over to this attack point field, and now we have to create the attack data. So let's do that. So I will navigate to my project tab, assets, then I will move over to this data enemy. Let's right click, create. In the bottom we can see data, and then we're gonna click on this attack data, and let's call this one attack data. And if we navigate to inspector, we can see attack radius we have chosen 1.2, and what is player, it says nothing, so we're gonna choose our player. And now we're gonna take our attack data, let's drag it over to this attack data field, and by now we can notice that circle just drawn from this attack point, and we can play around with this attack radius. So I'm gonna choose my boss enemy, then I will choose my attack boss. So I have to increase the attack radius. So let's do it. So first thing, I'm gonna right click on this attack data asset. Let's click on properties. So it just created that tab, which is attack data. And if I choose my enemy animation, so we can just increase the radius. So I'm gonna make it something like 1.76, and now that seems perfect, and that's all we have to do. And now what we're gonna do, we just gonna check, let's get close enough, it's charging, and once we attack, we can see it's playing the walk instead of attack animation clip. But this enemy just stops right there, because if we get out of play mode, move over to our console tab, we can see parameter attack does not exist. Basically, we need to make the transition from our charge state to our attack animation clip. So if we choose enemy in the hierarchy animation tab, sorry, animator, we can see we have those animation. So we need to make transition from this charge to our attack, which I have it over here. So let's make the transition, and a transition, let's right click on charge, make transition to attack. Let's choose this transition. We're gonna go over to inspector, let's uncheck has exit time, transition duration to 0, and we need to create those basically we need to choose this parameter. So I'm gonna create a attack parameter for my attack transition, and make sure you just spell it correct, because if we move over to our enemy one script, we can see the parameter we put it over here as a bool, which is attack, and you have to make sure the spelling is correct. So in my case I need to put this. So let's go over to a animator, let's click on plus, then we're gonna choose a bool parameter and we can call it attack, and let's choose that transition. So we're gonna choose to transition. So the first thing I'm gonna choose that if charge is false, if that is the case and attack is true, it means it's gonna make transition from our charge to attack, and this enemy just gonna play the attack animation clip over again and again. And we also need to make back transition to charge, or we will stuck forever inside this attack animation clip. So let's make back transition. Let's choose the transition. We're gonna uncheck has exit time, transition duration to 0, and let's choose those two conditions. So the first thing, we will check if attack is false and the charge parameter is true, and now it's gonna do that. Now let's get close enough to this enemy, and we can notice this enemy just playing the attack animation clip over again and again. But the thing is that we are stuck forever in attack state of this enemy, or you can think of attack class. So we also need to make transition back to move, detect, or detect, idle, depending upon where player is. So let's get out of play mode, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna move over to our attack state class that we created, and over here we're gonna make two two variable to check that. So the first thing what we're gonna do, we also need to make back transition, but before we do, we need to see that because we collided the circle just colliding that we created from this enemy, you can see we created this circle, and if that circle is colliding with our player, we do know that we just printing out the message over here. We can notice that a player takes damage, but we're not able to see this message because we need to call out this trigger attack function through our animation, but we don't have the direct connection from this trigger attack function. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna move over to our anime one script, and we can make two function for those we can make two method for those two function. One is trigger attack and one is finish attack. Because if we move over to basically we don't have a direct connection to this trigger attack function and this finish attack, and we're not gonna be able to call out through our animation tab. So that is the reason we're gonna move over to our anime one script, and we will make two function for our trigger attack and one for finish attack, and we're gonna call those trigger attack basically this function there and this function inside our finish attack. So once again we're gonna make those function inside anime one, and this anime one setting on this anime game object, so we're gonna have that direct connection. So let's make this make those two function inside this anime. So we're gonna make a public void, and make sure you just making it public so we can call through animation event, and we're gonna call it something like trigger attack, and let's make one more function for our finish attack. So let's make a public void finished attack, just like that. And first argument, and that's it. And we need to call out the trigger attack function inside this trigger attack function, or else we're not able to do basically we're not gonna able to print out this message, because we need to call this trigger attack function inside that trigger attack, because we by now we're gonna have the connection. So inside this trigger attack function, we're gonna call out the trigger attack function that we created, and we created inside this attack state, and we do have the attack state we can see over here. So we can just directly go over to that script. So let's go to attack state attack state, and now we're gonna call out the trigger attack function. So let's call it trigger attack, and inside our finish attack we're gonna call the finish attack function. So let's go to attack state once again, class, and let's call out the finish attack. And now we can see we have this, and we can call out this function our through animation event. And now we're gonna call those function through this anime one. So let's select our animation tab, then I'm gonna choose my attack animation. And over here, this is the perfect time to call out this trigger attack function. You can think of, we're just gonna call out this function, which is basically doing these things. It's basically checking our player, if the circle really collide with this player or not. So let's click on this add event inside this animation tab in the left side. Then we will go to inspector. Let's click on no function, enemy 1, methods means function, and let's call out the trigger attack. And the attack animation is finished over here, so we can call the finish attack function here. So let's call that. So let's go over to let's click on this add event once again, and then enemy 1, methods, and then finish attack. Basically we just going over to this enemy 1, and we calling this trigger attack once we triggering, and we calling out this finish attack function once the attack animation is totally finished. And now we can just check that out. Let's click on this play button in the top in order to check this out. So by now the message should be pop up says something like player takes damage, because inside our trigger attack function we simply printing out the message for now. And let's see, and if we close it up, and by now if we move over to our console tab, we can see player takes damage, a message just getting pop up inside our console tab every single time when when our enemy hits this player, because the circle we can see it's colliding with our player. So that's the reason the message just getting pop up. But once we get outside of it, we cannot see our player to move over to detect state, move state, or idle, basically where player is. So now we're gonna get out of play mode, and we created that parameter which is attack is finished. Basically if I move over to our attack state, we created this bool parameter which is attack finished. So we're gonna use this parameter to just keep track of when we need to do when the attack is finished. Attack is finished, basically once the attack animation is complete of this enemy, then we can just gonna make the transition. So that is the reason we just created this parameter and this finish attack function to just check once our attack is finished. So now we're gonna create two more function to just keep track of where enemy is. So first thing we're gonna create our close range, and another one for our max range of this enemy. So let's go to top of our class, and let's make a protected bool, and we can call is player in close range, close range, close range. And we're gonna make one more variable, protected bool, bool is player in max range, max aggro range. So let's call it max aggro range. And now we need to set this parameter. So let's get over to do checks function where we checking every single frame. So now we're gonna set is player in close range equal to, we will go to entity class, and now let's call out the check player as in close range, which is basically checking our player if it's inside a close range like this much of, if it's or not, sorry, if it's inside or not. And now we're gonna do the same thing for our is player in max range equal to entity dot check player in max aggro range. Now we just created the parameter and we are ready to just make the transition, but we just want to make the transition once our attack animation of this enemy is complete. And we do know that we just created this parameter which is attack finish. Once the animation is finished, then we just setting this is attack finish to true, you can see. And once it's true, we just want to check the distance, and once we enter to that state which is attack, we just set it to false. And now we're gonna move over to enemy 1 attack state, from where we basically just gonna make the transition. And we also have the reference of this enemy 1 script, means we have all of this state. By now we have the move idle, detect charts. Now we can just move over to this state depending upon where player is and if the attack animation is finished or not. So let's go over to our E1 attack state or enemy 1 attack state, and now let's get over to this logic update. And over here, before we make the transition, we just want to check if the animation is complete, and we do know that we created is attack is finished bool parameter, so we're gonna use that. Let's use the if condition, and we will check is attack is finished, means attack animation is completed. And now what we're gonna do, and we do know that we just set this parameter once our animation is complete, because if we navigate to Unity editor, animation, choose my attack, we calling this finish attack function over here. And inside this finish attack function, we do know we just setting setting, because if I move over to my attack state, we can see we just setting this parameter to true. And now we checking this parameter, basically means if the animation is complete or not. So if the complete animation is complete, means is attack finished, if that is the case. And now we're gonna check, so let's use if condition once again inside that, and we will check that is player in is close range. So we can just pass the state itself. So what we can do, we can just pass the state itself, and let's suppose the player in max aggro range. So else if is player in max aggro range, if that is the case, means our player is not close enough to this enemy. If it's somewhere like over here, that means this enemy need to switch over to detect state of this enemy. And if the player is over here, then this enemy need to play the attack animation clip over again and again. It means that enemy need to move over to attack state over again and again. And let's suppose the enemy is not inside attack range, enemy is far away from this enemy, then this enemy need to play the ideal move state of this enemy. So else, so we're gonna use the else condition once again. If the enemy is not inside attack range, is far away from our enemy, so what we can do, we can just move over to move state of our enemy. So we're gonna go over to state machine script, and now let's call out the change state function, which function just changing the state, and we need to put the state which state we just want to move. So if the enemy is player is far away, then we just gonna move over to enemy one script, and now we're gonna call out the move state function, because enemy is far away from our enemy. Our player is far away from enemy. But let's suppose the enemy inside aggro range of our enemy, a player is aggro inside aggro range of our enemy. It means enemy need to move over to detect state. So we will go to as state machine dot change state, and we're gonna put the state. Let's go to enemy one script, and now we're gonna put the state which state we just want to enter. So we're gonna enter to detect state, and let's suppose the enemy basically a player is close enough. Player, you can think of somewhere over here. So this enemy need to move over to detect state once again, attack state once again. So if is player is close range, then we're gonna move over to state machine dot change state, and we're gonna put enemy one dot attack state, basically the state itself. And now we can save our script, and we can just move over to Unity editor. And now we need to make the transition back to our detect move, like we just made it over here. So if the player is close range, so we can just leave this one. But if player is max aggro range, that means we need to move over to detect state. It means that we need to make the transition from our attack to detect animation clip, detect animation. Let's go over to animator tab, and now we're gonna make back transition from this attack to our detect, and as well to our work, because if we move over to script, we're just making the transition. You can see if the player is max aggro range, then we just move over to detect state. It means that we need to play the detect animation clip. So that's why we need to make the transition from this attack to detect animation clip. So let's right click, make transition back to our detect. Let's choose the transition. Let's go over to inspector. We're gonna uncheck the has exit time, duration to 0. Let's click on the choose two condition. So the first condition I'm gonna choose if attack is false and the player detect parameter is true, then it's gonna move over to detect state. And we also need to make a transition to this bug or move of this enemy, because we just moving to that state, we can see. So let's go to script and let's make transition to our work. Let's select the back transition. Let's go to inspector and check has exit time, fixed duration. Let's choose two condition. So the first condition we will choose if attack is false and the move parameter is true. And now it's gonna make the transition to our work. So let's take a quick look on this by now. So I'm gonna save my project by control S. And if we go ahead play our game, and we can notice it's attacking, but once we are not in attack range, we can see this enemy is now playing the move state. But once we get inside of this attack range of this enemy, it's moved to detect, and then it's just charging. And once we get close enough, it's just playing the attack animation clip over again and again. But once we get outside, it's moved to detect state. And once we get inside, we can see attack. And once we are totally out of this enemy attack range, we can notice this enemy by now it's playing the move animation clip over again and again, basically this enemy inside move state. So I hope you get the idea that how you can make the attack state of this enemy. And I'm gonna get out of play mode, and I will see you in the next tutorial. So goodbye for now.